Okay. Excellent. Okay, welcome everybody again. It's Friday and we're talking about math. Not my favorite subject, but we have to talk about it. We have to do it. Everybody has to do math. We are going to open with prayer, and I'm going to repeat this beautiful prayer to St. Anne that I've been praying because St. Anne is one of my homeschooling patronesses since she taught Mary. So let's pray and ask for her help. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Glorious St. Anne, filled with compassion for those who invoke thee, and with love for those who suffer, heavily laden with the weight of my troubles, I cast myself at thy feet and humbly beg of thee to take the present affair, which I recommend to thee under thy special protection. Vouchsafe to recommend it to thy daughter, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and lay it before the throne of Jesus, so that he may bring it to a happy issue. Cease not to intercede for me until my request is granted. Above all, obtain for me the grace of one day beholding my God face to face, and with thee and Mary and all the saints, praising and blessing him for all eternity. Good Saint Anne, mother of her who is our life, our sweetness, and our hope, pray to her for us and obtain our request. Amen. Saint Anne, pray for us. Yay! So I'm going to start, if that's okay, Amy, and then we can go to you, because I know I just have one thing, really, and Amy's got lots of different options for you. We are a Mathtacular family, and we have used Mathtacular since kindergarten, and my oldest is finishing the Algebra 2 book. So we've done the span of it. When we first started homeschooling my oldest, we started with Mathtacular because I did all the research and it made the most sense to me. I can do math. I don't personally have a problem with math, but I'm not great at math. Language and literature is my love. And so I wanted something that was simple and clear and easy for me. And I especially liked that there were manipulatives. So Mathtacular comes with blocks, or you purchase blocks, and every level teaches you how to see math problems with the blocks. Kind of like unit blocks, but they're just specific to the Mathtacular learning. And logistically, you get a student book. Above kindergarten, you get a test book, you get a teacher manual, and a video lesson along with the blocks. Right now, you know, of course, everything being modern, the video lesson and even the blocks and the teacher's manuals can all be purchased digitally as an option, so that helps some families. But we started with that and struggled after kindergarten. So we got to like first, second grade and things got rough and challenging, and math was the screaming tears, you know, her, me, whatever. And so I thought, oh, we got to switch curriculum. This is going to be hard. I was liking it. She was not doing horribly. It was just hit a wall, and every couple of weeks we would just really struggle. So I picked up an Abeka book, and we started that, and she loved it because it was colorful and there were pictures. Mathtacular's all black and white, just math problems, nothing else. But I saw very quickly that she wasn't actually retaining anything, because we got past like the third or fourth lesson and there was like a review and she didn't know anything she had already learned. So I was like, wait a minute, this might not be the right thing. We picked up something else that someone gave me. It was like a workbook. I'm sure it was one of those Catholic school workbooks. I forget the name of it. It was a little less colorful and pretty and more sequential, but the same thing started happening as we got through a few lessons, and then she didn't retain anything. And so I started to look into why was she struggling? What were the issues? And everything she was having trouble with was place value. And she got really upset about doing math again, even though it had been a little bit more fun. And so I was like, you know what? When we were doing Mathtacular, because you see the blocks and the place value, it made sense. They focus on place value a lot. And so we just went back to it. And math has always been a struggle for that child and always will be, but it made the most sense to her, even though math is hard, because she could look at the place value and she could see the blocks and she would know what to do. And so we've gone all the way through, and a couple times as she's gotten older, I've asked, you know, should we keep going? Should we find something more engaging? And she's like, no, it works. It's hard, but it's what my brain needs to just methodically go through things. So Math-UC is a mastery approach, not a spiral approach to math. And if you don't know the difference, spiral approaches will teach a concept and then teach another concept and review that concept, and then teach another concept and review those two concepts, and keep going. So like first and second grade, you're doing, I haven't picked up a book in a long time, maybe you're doing at least 3, if not all 4, add, subtract, multiply, divide. But for Math-UC, the way it's set up is primer is introduction to numbers and blocks. Alpha is addition. And by the time they get to the end of alpha, they're adding like 6-digit numbers in first grade. Beta is subtraction, then multiplication, then division. They spend an entire year mastering that principle. Now, that's not to say there's not review. There's lots of review, and it goes back. And it does also do some kind of ahead work where they're having you picture what it will look like when you multiply, which they call fast adding. So you kind of put together. But for the most part, you're focusing in on one operation through those years, and then you move into fractions and decimals, and it continues with kind of a mastery. Again, that has worked really well for my kids. It works probably, I have 2 kids that probably really need the Math-UC. My oldest, who just struggles with math, and my 3rd child, who has some executive function issues. And he just needs that very clean page and that very simple, methodical, like no distraction. All I'm doing is adding. My other 2 kids are bright in math, and they could probably do well with any program I gave them. But for me as mom and teacher, it was much easier to just keep everybody the same, because I understand the terminology and the way Math-UC teaches, because I think you'll find that every math program teaches things a little bit differently. I mean, the biggest contrast would be you're hearing all about Common Core math and how different it is. There's nothing essentially wrong with it. It's just so different than a lot of other maths that like you have to figure that out. So same with any math program, as there's a terminology and a vocabulary that you use. So it's worked for us. The one thing that everybody always asks me is, does it prepare them enough for the, you know, is the high school math enough? Does it prepare them for the SAT and things like that? It is not one of the most high-level challenging math programs out there, I don't think. But for SAT, we just have supplemented with SAT practice, which we would have done anyway if we did a higher level, like a more intense, not higher level, a more intense math. So it covers the same concepts, but I have had to supplement for SAT math so that both of my oldest kids can be prepared. And then the other thing I'll say about it is, because of the way it's set up, we can move as slowly or as quickly as the child needs based on mastery. So every book has, in elementary, every lesson has 3 pages of practice problems for what the new concept they're learning, and then 3 pages of review that include that concept and all the ones before it. So for my kids, the deal we make is that if you make 100, you do not miss any on one of your pages, you skip the next one. And then, you know, we can move forward. And sometimes I've had where they skip 2 in a row because I'm like, you just flew through that. There's no reason to do all the math problems. I've had friends who've had kids who are so bright that they just give them the test first, and most, you know, and they can skip whole lessons because it's simple for them. As soon as they learn the lesson, they're able to do it and master it. But anyway, I like that it gives you that flexibility. And then if your child's really struggling and you've done all 6 pages and you can't master it, their website has printable worksheets for free that you can download and print out to give them extra practice in whatever that lesson area is. The teacher's manual has both verbal instruction for the teacher to talk through and some example problems. And then the videos is Mr. Demi, the creator of the program, teaching the lesson with magnetic blocks that stick on a whiteboard behind him. So he shows you how to move the blocks and exactly how to do it. And the kids love that Mr. Demi is their teacher too. So after we watched the video together, like until about 2nd or 3rd grade, and then they want to go watch the video and try the page themselves. And by the time they're like in 5th grade, they're doing math on their own and coming to me with questions, and I just grade it. And even in high school, we kind of transition into they also take the teacher's manual so they can read through the text and understand, you know, again, as a review to what he taught in the lesson. So it seems simple, and it is simple, but yet it's got all the components that you would need. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
What else can I say? I don't know. I guess that's all I'll say for now. We can talk after if there's questions about how that works or anything we've added. Amy, do you want to share what you guys have loved?
We love Singapore math, which is, we kind of came across it by accident. Everybody we knew was using Saxon or teaching textbooks or something like that. And I'd never heard of Singapore, only that it was like, you hear about Singapore always does really well in international tests for math. So this is a program that takes what they have done and addresses it. And there's at least two different versions now. There's the standards version, which is basically the metric system. And then there's the US version, which is what we choose to use because that's where we live. They will teach both metric and US when they get to the measurement portions, but we just chose the US standards because that just made the most sense to me when we were choosing it. We use, it looks like this. This is level 5. Each grade level is split into A and B sections, and you will have a textbook, a workbook, and a home instructor guide for A, and a textbook, a workbook, a home instructor guide for B. The home instructor guide is not the same as the teacher guide. There's also a teacher guide. The teacher guide is meant for teachers in a classroom. Don't get that one. Get the home instructor's guide because that's geared towards homeschool moms who are teaching one kid, not a whole class. They look like this. Each grade is a different color. Like first grade is yellow and second grade is green. Third grade is pink. Fourth grade is blue. Fifth grade is purple. And fifth grade is green. Sixth grade is purple and blue. So the colors go together too. It gives you a list of manipulatives to use. It does not provide them, but we just bought like the basic Saxon manipulative kit for like K through third grade. And for the most part, that's been fine. We did buy little place value discs once we had like fourth grade, and that was super helpful. And there's just been a few other things we've added here and there that have really helped them. The reason I like it is because it is hands-on. And so math is a really abstract concept if you think about it. To look at these two figures that say 10 and understand that that means 10 things is like learning a foreign language for your kids. Math is really a foreign language. So you have to keep that in mind when you're teaching math, and that's why it's so confusing, because you're basically teaching them a foreign language and you're saying, no, it's this. And they're like, that makes no sense at all. I'm looking at a number on a piece of paper and you're telling me it means 10 things. That makes no sense. So the reason I like Singapore math is in the textbooks, this is the first grade book. It's really colorful. It teaches them different ways to visualize those things. It works with 10 frames, which is the eggs, which kind of messes with mom's head because it's not in a dozen, it's in a 10, but it helps the kids visualize and they get really good at noticing, oh, if there's 2 missing, that must mean 8. Or if there's a whole thing filled and 3 more, that must mean 13. And it helps them visualize that number and really make it concrete, which is what you're trying to do with this abstract concept of math, to make it so that they can understand it better. The teacher guide really talks you through how to do it. My kids always hit a wall in second grade with the addition, subtraction, multiplication facts. So we will step back and take extra practice and just really hammer home the addition, subtraction, multiplication, because if they can't know those, they really can't move on to the next stuff anyways. Singapore frequently gets dinged because they don't have a lot of extra practice, which is why my kids love it. The workbook page has 10 to 15 problems. It's not overkill. They do include what they call mental math in the back, and they really want your kids to focus on that, visualizing the numbers and doing the things mentally in their heads. And the way my kids can do math in their heads amazes me. Like they can take 3-digit numbers, divide them by 2-digit numbers like that. And it's seriously amazing. I wish I had learned it this way when I was a kid. But it is easy to supplement that sort of thing with extra math test practices or speed drills or something like that. So that hasn't been a problem really. So that's the main program we use. To go off that, we supplement with Life of Fred, which is just fun little stories that make it entertaining. And that helps them kind of visualize it in a different way. If you have a literature-based kid versus a math science-based kid, this is super, super helpful. This is the only way one of my kids is getting through higher level math right now is Life of Fred. And then another thing we tried this year, we were in a pilot program for a new math program that's just coming out for kindergarten and first grade. They're going to get to fourth and fifth, but they haven't made them all yet. But if you have little kids, it's called Kate Snow's Math with Confidence. It is absolutely fantastic. It's mostly mastery based, but she does build in a little bit of review. It's a lot of games and fun things. My kindergartner is doing the first grade program, and he is absolutely loving math. Like he wants to do math every day, and he is learning like +9 and +8 and +7 at 6 years old. And it's seriously just amazing. It's just a great program. The K program is out now. The first grade program should come out this fall, I believe. And then she's going to add on the other grades after that. And that has just been, I've been really, really impressed with that program. And then I wrote down some other stuff. I thought this would be easier, of other things we use to supplement. Let's see if this works. No, it's backwards. Darn. All right. So extra math practice.
Right. It's right.
It's right to us.
You see it backwards, good. But we see it fine.
So extramath.org is just extra math practice. You plug in your kid's name and their grade level, and it assigns them. It's just fact practice, plus minus, multiplication, division, and they go through. When my kids make it all the way through, they don't have to do it anymore. Prodigy is a fun game-based thing. Like your kid develops a character and there's a story involved. It's kind of like Zelda in math. That's the best way I can describe it. Dreambox Math is they just do extra practice. My kids don't like that one as much. Extra Math and Prodigy are both free, by the way, which is excellent. Khan Academy is free. They have extra math practice. When my kids get stuck on something and I just can't explain it to them just the right way, sometimes I'll send them to Cat Academy, because having someone else explain it just gets them over that hump a little bit. Math Geek Mama has tons of fun games and activities, and especially for seasonal stuff, like she'll have Pi Day activities or St. Patrick's Day math or things like that. She also has this awesome 6 or 7 week program about math and nature, and it just shows you the beauty of math and nature and how everything's connected. And she goes into fun things you never get into, like the Fibonacci sequence, but makes it intelligible to 5 and 10-year-olds. And then Kate Snow Math is the last one. That's the program we've been piloting this year for the math. It also has a few books out to help you learn tricks to learn all the operations, plus minus, multiplication and division. So yeah. Oh, and one last thing. This is just a silly little video that it's seriously like a college kids project that they videotape, but it's super fun and ridiculous, and it just teaches basic things like adding and subtracting, and they use the little teddy bear counters, and they teach them how to tell time with clocks and counting and all those sorts of things. So it's just a fun little thing if you're learning that concept. The table of contents lists it for you, and you can just go, okay, we learned about telling time, so we're going to watch all those telling time videos today, and it's like 5 minutes long.
What's the name of that?
It's called Mathtacular.
Okay. Cool. So you guys use Singapore up to what grade level?
It goes up to level 6 because of that wall we hit usually in 2nd grade, and another one level later, usually the fraction and percents. It usually takes us through 7th grade. But the thing is Singapore is typically 6 months to a year ahead of regular school, so they don't end up being behind. And then after you finish, you can go right into pre-algebra, which would, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah, we use Life of Fred too. I can't believe I didn't mention that one. Lots of fun. Questions that we had, and then we can open it up to Valerie asks, how does Matthew C work if you can't master the topic? There's extra practice you can do, and their staff and their website and their Facebook groups are all very helpful to like add additional, practices or games or anything. But really, I just go to what kind of some of the stuff Amy's mentioned. There's so many math things out there that if they can't, get a certain lesson or a certain thing, then we're going to just find other ways to talk about it and practice it. If you're specifically talking about your special needs kid, you may need to find a special needs specific math if you feel like that's really going to be a stumbling block. I would talk to the people at Memoria Press Simply Classical. They've the first ones that I know of that have specifically created a homeschool program for special needs kids. I could be wrong about the only ones that do it, but they're the only ones I am aware of that has a very specific curriculum plan for those with special needs and a whole department dedicated to taking care of those families. And they might be good to consult about that. As far as Mary Ann asks about just that point, fractions, struggle through the mastery, but not getting there. Yeah, we just add extra practice or different lessons. Like Amy said, we'll go to if it's upper level, we'll go to Khan Academy and maybe watch something, see if we can figure out a different way to explain it that makes more sense. I've never had a spot where like we just couldn't move forward, because I don't think my kids have that, absolute issue. Amy suggests check Math Mammoth. Right. Math Mammoth, I've heard very good things about as well. Is a good program. Laura asks, are the Singapore placement tests accurate, Amy?
So I would say they're fairly accurate, but as Jenny pointed out, every math program has their own sort of jargon. So the jargon and the vocabulary they use in Singapore math is very different from other programs. So the jargon and how they set up problems can kind of trip up your kids. I would recommend, depending on like if you have a first or second grader, start with the first grade program. We actually didn't use the kindergarten program. We started in first grade.
I was just wondering because I've been looking at a lot of stuff because math is like the one thing I don't want to get wrong. It's not
right.
like science or social studies where you can kind of jump around. And I really like how strong the number sense and the mental math seems to be in with what I've seen, obviously, of this the primary. So I was looking at the placement test, and I haven't had my girls take them yet, but just by looking at them and haven't worked with them for the past few weeks, I can see how one might be able, like my first grader might be able to skip the first half of one and then do like 1B and 2A, and then my third grader might have to actually go back, just by looking at them. So I'm wondering if can you do that, or should you, just stick with 1A and 1B for first grade and 3A and 3B for second, third grade?
You can absolutely do. I mean, the way we do math in our house is if they don't finish when we hit the end of the year, we just carry it on to next year. So half the time we're starting in the second half of whatever book, and it could be an A book or a B book, depending on where we ended up the prior year. So you can absolutely do that. The 1A, I would probably get it, just the textbook maybe to look at, to refer back to, and maybe even the teacher guide, because it's so basic to the program to know the verbiage they use and how they explain how to do stuff. It just might be helpful for you to have that and to have that picture.
I actually found a used copy that I ordered just so I could have it in my hands and look through it. And then I had one more question, sorry. The home instructor guide, do you think that's really helpful?
Absolutely. Get it. Don't do it without it. It has the answer key in the back. It has the mental math in the back practice. It has the mental math answer keys, and it has the way to talk you through it, because I can look at the textbook, but they get in some really tricky word problems once you start hitting third and fourth grade. And I'll tell my kids when we're checking their math, I'm like, I don't know how to do this one. You need answer keys so I can help you walk through it. And that helps walk you through it so we can figure it out together. But
Thank you.
That's excellent. Sure. That's excellent. You brought up a couple of thoughts I was going to mention about Matthew C. That because it is a mastery program, and there are a couple other programs that are mastery programs. If you're doing standardized tests, or if you have intention of putting your kids back in a traditional school setting, a mastery program, two different things. If you're doing standardized tests, a mastery program is going to leave some gaps because it generally assumes a spiral approach. And so that's just something, as Matthew C users, we know that our kids are going to miss those problems because we just didn't get there yet. And then it doesn't phase us. I mean, most states that I know that require standardized tests just require you to pass. It's not like you have to get the top score. If you're planning on, at some point you feel like you're going to put your kids in a traditional school setting, you may want to seriously, evaluate what that school setting is going to do and if a mastery versus spiral is better. Because like I said, most schools, to my knowledge, use a spiral approach, and you don't want your kid to be out of sorts. But that said, like Amy said, Mathtacular is the program as well that you can start at any point. You can continue it on in the next year. As my kids get older, they do try to finish a book at the end of each year, because we're trying to keep on track for high school. But especially in the younger grades, we just start in the middle of the book, or we may, and that's why they're labeled not by grade level, but by alpha, beta, gamma, delta, and all the Greek alphabet. So that's something to keep in mind as well if you're looking at different programs. I'm not sure how Singapore tests as far as standardized or anything like that, Amy, but I know there's always that.
What I found, because we have done standardized tests, is my kids did for the most part well in what they did well in with math, and they didn't do so well in the things that I knew they struggled with in math. So it wasn't totally off. It was kid specific. So they did fine. Yeah.
Okay. And then Valerie asks, anybody tried teaching textbooks? I will say, Valerie, if you're talking about for your older son who's been kind of getting through Khan Academy but not learning, I've heard that teaching textbooks also has similar issues with they can enter and answer, like it gives them clues based on what they can enter. And so when you were describing that, I was like, then she shouldn't use teaching textbooks because he'll work the system.
Yes. I had a friend whose kid did that, and they didn't find out till like half a semester in that he was like skipping answers or fudging answers, and then they had to go back. So beware of anything like that.
So, and Marianne, you're right. Teaching textbooks is spiral. It's a lighter math. Some kids really like it. It is all on the computer, so mom does not have to teach. It is known to be a little bit behind, the 6 months to a year behind on if you're testing on standardized tests, which isn't a problem for most homeschoolers. But yeah, you can, with kids like that, you probably are going to need paper and pencil. There are videos. What is the popular Mr. D Math? Is that the one that's really popular right now? That is a video program where they learn the lesson, but they have the book that they're doing or the printout or whatever that they're doing the work by hand, and you have to grade that, and that way your kid wouldn't work around that. I'm trying to think of what else would be good math for an accelerated student. I mean, Singapore is good too, because you can just go at his pace.
Right. Singapore is good, I think, for the slower kids or the faster kids, because of the whole you can work at their own pace.
Yeah, and I would say the same for Mathtacular. It's just, you can go at their own pace. Good questions. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Singapore has what they call extra challenge problems. It's an extra book you can buy that does kind of do that, kind of like the math challenge you were talking about, Valerie, with the extra more tricky, difficult problems. They also have like a review book too. I usually go for the review book over the extra challenge problems, but for your son, it might be a really good fit to do the extra challenge problems.
Singapore's?
That's Singapore's, yeah.
Mathtacular has that built into every lesson. Every lesson has an extra page that's like that. Now that you learned this concept, here's how to apply it to a real world situation and having to think through the logic of the problem. So do all of these go through calculus? No. Mathtacular does, but Singapore does not.
No.
Mathtacular goes through trig or what is it? Calculus. I don't know. We are not doing those upper levels yet because she's stopping at algebra 2. She's done.
I assume it has geometry too. So
we did geometry.
Like, it would be Al1, algebra 1, 2, and trig and geometry.
Right, because the order they do it these days is algebra 1, then geometry, then algebra 2, which is, I don't know.
That's how we did it in high school too.
Yeah, and then I'm going to tell you for sure how far it goes. But so I know my next son, he will be
doing calculus.
Yeah.
If he was in public school, he'll be doing calculus when he's in.
So after algebra 2, there is a pre-calculus book and then a calculus book.
Okay. On Mathtacular.
On Mathtacular, yeah. So a lot of people
stop at 6th, or does it go through does it go higher? I thought I have written down that it only went through 6. Does it go higher?
So Singapore, their basic program goes 1 through 6 or K through 6. Then the program you jump to called Dimensions that goes through like 8th grade or 9th, I think mostly 8th grade. And then you'd have to find pre-algebra, algebra, and all that other stuff. But once you finish grade 6, you can go right into pre-algebra. So you don't have to use their dimensions program. Once you finish 1 through 6, you can find a pre-algebra program and go with that. And then if you have a program that's pre-algebra through calc, you could use that for the upper levels for your son.
I've heard a lot of people that finish out Singapore, they go straight into Saxon.
We tried that. So Singapore is a mastery program. Saxon is a spiral program.
Right.
It did not work for my kids. I know a lot of people do that, and I know Saxon is like the gold standard of homeschool math because that's what's been around for forever, and it's scripted, and for a ton of kids it works great, and a ton of homeschoolers use it. It was not a good fit for us. So that's
my oldest is only in 3rd grade, so
okay. You got time to figure it out.
You know, the pros I hear about Saxon is that it is spiral, it is reputable, well known, well done. The cons are that there's tons and tons and tons and tons of problems, which can also be a pro if you need a lot of work. But for the kids, that's usually the complaint, is that it's too many problems. So,
that phone, sorry.
you know, which is another point about homeschooling, is that you can tell them
Yes.
okay. Just do the odd problems, or just do the even problems, or do the front of the page. And then if you do well, you don't have to do the back of the page. So you can really be pretty flexible when you're teaching math with your kids at home. Trying to think also, what else is really popular?
For Gabe, they suggested that he do the 5 hardest problems on the page. And if you got the 5 hardest problems on the page, he got to go, his group got to go and do their extra math and not have to go through the whole thing.
Right. Yeah, that's a judgment call on which are the 5 hardest problems. Because I know I have had kids who struggle more with easy problems, or kids who struggle more with word problems, or kids who struggle more with the big numbers, and you know. But yeah, you can pick and choose what fits that kid, which is nice. Yeah, so we've just I want to say also with Life of Fred, we use it as a supplement for fun. And it helps my kids feel like math isn't so awful. But I use it not concurrently with what we're learning in math. I use it as a review of something maybe we learned last year. So my 3rd, 4th grader is, you know, has done the first like 4 books. But even this year, he's just now in the Life of Fred, just now getting to subtraction from that process. So it's just for us a review. So anything you use like that, you know, you have the option to add that. We have done extra math for math facts, like Amy said. At some point, you have to figure out what works for your kid and memorizing all the facts and doing all the facts. There are some kids I've learned that just are horrible at memorizing anything their entire lives. And they will still count on their fingers when they're in high school. And I mean, we still work on it. We still do things, practices and so forth, but it's just always never going to come easily. There's research studies that say that counting on your fingers is not a sign of, like, it's actually a sign of a good process going on in your brain. So I'm like, you'll be fine. But yeah.
Jenny, I have a couple things that we use to supplement for those extra things.
Please.
All of the websites that you guys have mentioned, those are wonderful, but they don't work for us.
Yeah.
So we need the tactile for our ADHD boys. So one thing we have is the learning wrap-ups. They make them for addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, states, capitals. Like, there are so many different ones out there. My oldest this year, he could not memorize his addition facts, basics. And then we started him in Gamma, though, even though he didn't have his. So that was multiplication for Math-UC. And it was an amazing difference seeing him being able to actually do the math, but he couldn't memorize the math facts. So we took a 2-week break, and we got these for multiplication when he got going from the single digit to multiple digit multiplication. And we took 2 weeks, and they have a book that actually goes with these. They have it for addition and multiplication, and it's 10 days to multiplication mastery. And it took him a little bit longer to do, but it's just doing these. And they're self-correcting. They have like grooves on the back that tell them if they got their answers right, and they just drop it around. Okay, 7 minus 1 equals 6, and they have to match it up from side to side. And just reading across like that, and the working with his hands to do it, he can tell you every single multiplication fact from 12 up to 12 times 12. And this is a kid who never could memorize anything. So these were like huge for us. My younger son is using them now for addition. So
Very cool. Yes, I've seen those.
They're
Those
called
are really good.
Learning Wrapups.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And there's also the same company does these learning palettes, and we use these for like pre-K and kindergarten. And these are also self-correcting. They have everything from like learning your letters and numbers to going up all the way into like almost algebra levels. They have all kinds of fun ways to do. So
Awesome. Very, very cool. There's a couple of resources that have been recommended to me that we've dabbled in that I feel like are really good. There's addition facts that stick and multiplication facts that stick. A lot of my friends love those. It's a book, so it's not, online or anything, and you're doing, it just takes you through reviewing and the stories. So my daughter did well with times tails to memorize her multiplication facts, and it's these dumb animations that tell the story of the multiply, that like the numbers are the characters, and then they multiply and create something anew. So you learned, I can't even remember an example, but I feel like it was like an apple in a tree and like a animal, and then like they multiplied and became like seeds, or I don't even know, it was something. But the story and the visual worked for her to get better at those facts. So there's lots of resources like out there that are available. Cool. Yeah. Anything else that you guys want to share or ask? Yeah, I think that, like we talked about in the group, with math, almost everybody picks a program that's like their core, and then has these kind of supplemental things that they learn about and throw in when their kid needs something, needs something to figure out. And there were a few other comments in those threads about different math programs that we haven't mentioned today. So feel free to go back to those and ask those people questions and see. But this has been really good. I know we have another question about Singapore coming up. Amy, I can ask you now, is there a Facebook group dedicated to teaching Singapore math? If you can unmute.
I think there is.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure there is. I honestly have no idea what it is though, because I've never used it. But I've heard that there is one. So I can't imagine there not being one.
Right, yeah. There's one for Math-UC, and it's incredibly helpful because moms will go in there with very specific, we're on lesson 5 of Gamma and my kid's stuck on this, what do I do? And moms will come up with all these tips. There's a few employees of Math-UC that are on there too. So they'll even say, oh, well, you need to do this, or call us. And there's gonna be a thread coming up within the next hour on the Facebook group, asking people to drop in the other Facebook groups that are curriculum specific, because there's tons out there. Like whatever curriculum you choose and you feel like you're going to need help from other people who've done it, you can type in the Facebook group bar, you can type Singapore Math Moms group or parents or something, and you might find some help that way as well.
I know I sent in a whole bunch of Singapore questions in a post because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to make it to this meeting. So I was like, I really want to make. It was probably me. I was like, I just need somebody to tell me exactly what to get and how to do it, because I looked at the program, I like it, but I need to know what to do. Like, just walk me through it. So thank you, Amy, very much. That was very helpful.
Sure. Yeah. I'll send if that was you, I can't remember names. There's too many people now, but
I bet.
I'll send those questions to Amy and make sure she answered all of them. I know Amy will help us out. Awesome. Good. Well, thank you, ladies. This has been enjoyable talking about math, which is not always the case. Like I said at the beginning, I think, math is one of those things that you have to do. I don't think, there's people that like math and people that don't like math, but we all have to do it. I've noticed that math is the thing for me that takes the most control and calm for me to get through, because it is one of those things, you're right or you're wrong, and kids are going to be wrong, and it's not like literature where we read a story and talk about it and there's lots of good right answers. There's definitely right and wrong, and that kind of can bring out some emotional distress in children and mothers. So be patient with yourselves, be patient with your kids, but also I'm like, my lesson has been pick something and go with it, even if it's hard, because there's switching back and forth in math curriculums is not the best plan for your kid. And there's a friend from years ago who, graduated almost all her kids by now, but I remember her telling the story of how she had kids who hated math and they hated to do math. And so she put it off, and then they do a little here and a little there because it was just meltdowns every time. And they got to the point where like they were getting middle school, high school, and they were so far behind, and they realized they had goals in life and wanted to go to college and do these things. And so she gave her kids that burden that she didn't have to give by pushing it to the back burner. So I always encourage moms, just stick with it, just keep going. It's hard. But it's important. It's definitely important. So I will be back tomorrow to talk about morning basket stuff, which is our version of morning time or circle time or symposium or whatever you want to call it. And we'll start talking tonight in the group about that a little bit and what that is. But for me, it's just a collection of all the other things that aren't a core subject and that we do all together as a family. And it's a beautiful thing. So if you've done morning time and love it and want to share about it, if you have never heard of morning time, join us or watch it. Or if you, even if you've done it and tried it and it hasn't worked for you, join us and we'll chat through that as well. But I think it's a really special gift to homeschoolers that we can do things together because we're all home. And that's one thing we should take advantage of, because families don't have that if their kids are, off in different directions. So hopefully I'll see you on Saturday.